shareholders 11 billion in the last 12 months. So you have a hidden tax of about 100 billion on the American people, Alex, in terms of our wireless connectivity. And so I was inspired by what Mark Cuban did with generic drugs, where he bought generic drugs at bulk and tried to make them available to the American people at a low markup. You could frame that as universal basic services. Maybe that's not enough. But I love it. You know, if we can get energy costs down to zero or near zero, freaking sign me up. If you look at the cost structure of the average American household right now, it goes in this order. Number one, housing. 2, healthcare. 3, education. 4, food. 5, fuel. 6, transportation. 7, entertainment and media. And 8, wireless. So I think we should be trying to attack each of those. But the fact is, like, the highest line item one is housing, which, is relying upon local zoning ordinances and all this nonsense that it's like hard even for the feds to come in and say, hey, we're going to build 7 million new housing units, because wealthy people get very conservative when someone's trying to build an affordable housing complex in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm totally down with trying to attack the cost structure at every turn. You identified fuel, which is on the list at but it's not the main thing for Americans. If we can get housing and healthcare and hopefully education under control, then you'd be making real progress.
But maybe just to press on that point a bit. So for housing, healthcare, and education, there's an alternative universe perhaps where we create an overabundance of supply rather than juicing demand with stimulus checks. So in your mind, how would you morally weight, say, creating special economic zones where housing is overabundant, filled with skyscrapers, or where healthcare is driven to zero with effectively municipality level AI, or education is purely AI, basically trying to solve this perceived problem from the supply side with overabundance rather than from the demand side with stimulus?
I'm all for it. I just think that right now, if you say, hey, which is going to be faster, I have more confidence in our ability to transfer money into people's bank accounts very, very quickly than I do designing some of the solutions you're talking about.
It's not one or the other, right?
Yeah, it's not one or the other. And even if you were to have the permits today to build the skyscrapers in the place, I mean, you're talking about realistically months or years, and that's if everything were magically in place.
Yeah, Elon's point was we're going to have humanoid robots that will be able to build you whatever you want at the cost of basically energy and raw materials, and AI will deliver us health and education, and in fact, AI will become your shadow worker for you, go earn the revenue for you. We can get into that. Salim, you were going to add.
Yeah, two things. I think the UBS, the most constructive thing I've heard about the UBS commentary,
Universal Basic Services,
is the channels aren't burned in. Right? I think Andrew makes a valid point that if we want to just give money, it's the easiest model. And on the affordability and how much do you think, the best framing I've seen is you give people enough to survive but not be happy. And then you still have a very thriving economy, jobs, etc. Entrepreneurship explodes under this model. Just an observation, in the 1970s, Manitoba in Canada, the province, gave a UBI out, and they implemented this program, and it was staggeringly successful. And after 2 years, they realized, oh my God, they don't even need government to exist if we have this incidence. And they canceled it instantly because government wants to exist. And that's the immune system. I think that's the most difficult part about this, is that if you implement it properly, you can get rid of a lot of government services, let the market take care of it. But that's a very hard jump for governments to make.
I would really enjoy that. And one of the things that made me sad when I was campaigning was that there was a woman in Iowa who said, hey, I'm afraid to volunteer in my community because I might lose my disability check. Because I'm afraid someone might see me walking around and that I'm healthy. And so I stay in. And I was like, well, that's really depressing. I think everyone can agree that her showing up to the church bake sale is a win for both her and the people. So that there's a lot of bad incentives in this system. a lot of paternalism, a lot of stuff that makes people feel like they're subject to the bureaucracy of government in a way that's really stilling like even the most basic forms of entrepreneurship.
Andrew, I think your answer is right on target because the timelines, the small timeline differences are going to matter a lot. Job loss is a 2026 thing and then a huge 2027 thing. And then building, low-income housing is a multi-year, just getting it approved is a very long, slow process. So you're going to have rampant social unrest during that 2-year window if we don't do something quick. So giving out stimmy checks is quick. I also think that subsidizing employment, the problem with stimulus checks is when you pay somebody to not work, they lose the work motivation very, very quickly. And we saw that during COVID. So another very quick thing is subsidizing employment, where the government says, look, if you find new productive things for people to do that are AI oriented and that have a long-term future, the government will subsidize half that payroll or 3/4 of that payroll, but put it back in the hands of the private sector to decide how to use people subsidized by the government.
There's also the public works, right? Where the government basically takes on large, massive projects and employs people to do those things.
Well, yeah, but put the, like the Cape Cod Canal to me was a massive public works project with one boat a day and 10 million cars trying to get over the bridges. Just like you created a huge hole in the ground that is more of a problem than a solution. Yeah. So you don't want the government deciding. You want to put that back into the private sector, saying, hey, creators, find something really useful to do. Amazon, find something really useful to do. We'll just partially subsidize it during this turbulent, window. And then Alex is so
Dave, you're describing Canada because in Canada they do a lot of this where they subsidize, but the problem is they put so many rules and procedural barriers, it becomes nonsensical to try and get it. So that's the problem there.
Alex, over to you.
Yeah, I think there's another potential interesting model that we've started to discuss on this pod a bit over the past few episodes that looks maybe a little bit like what we're seeing with data centers that are being compelled or are opting into subsidizing electric infrastructure construction because they're becoming increasingly the largest consumers of the supply of available power. And one can imagine a very near future, where data centers and the hyperscalers and frontier labs behind them are essentially subsidizing to the point of offering for free electricity to consumers that can then consume from the same infrastructure that the hyperscalers are building for their own consumption. So I guess maybe to put that in question form, Andrew, going back to UBI versus UBS versus universal basic equity versus whatever's behind door number 4, what do you think of the possibility that as superintelligence is driving an overabundance of supply, that what we see is some sort of basically shadow UBI or shadow UBS, wherein, as we're seeing again with data center builders being asked to subsidize infrastructure consumption, we see the hyperscalers being asked to subsidize universal basic services or income for personnel, for consumers, for municipalities in their general area.
Yes, I think that's in the portfolio, Alex, of things that could be helpful solves. I want to underscore just how far along in this process we are. I mean, you all remember when the healthcare CEO was shot in the street, and then his killer is lionized, and that was X months ago. I think things just continue to deteriorate. Where young people today, and this pains me, I was just speaking to a group of CEOs yesterday, where it's like young people now regard a lot of successful people as bad, and you look at that and be like, wait a minute, like that's obviously like a very troubling characterization where, it's like, oh, anyone who's done well must have stepped on people or done something negative or malignant. And so you can characterize what inning we're in of the deterioration, but it's one reason why Dave said it's like, oh yeah, like we got to move fast. I think we really have to move as quickly as we can because the anger is rising, and the anger is getting refracted through our two-party system in various ways. So on the left, it's like, okay, capitalism bad, socialism good. You know, the average age of a first-time home buyer is like 40 years old now. So if you're 28, you're out of luck. You know, you're going to get a college degree that is valueless. The underemployment rate for recent college grads is now over 50%. You're going to be at home with your parents. You still owe these loans. Like the anger is really, really high and rising. And then on the right, it's taking this other form, this kind of reactive, like hyper genderizing of various like roles and conversations and things that also don't, in my mind, you know, like solve the problem. And so I'm all about trying to get there as quickly as we can, even recognizing that people are going to slip through the cracks. Like, even if we were to do a lot of good things like that, there's, I mean, this is where Elon's, I predict universal high income and social unrest. It's like the unrest is unfortunately much closer than we'd like to think.
Andrew, let me throw out an idea that I've been focused on and trying to work on solutions, which is we have a new pandemic coming. And this is a emotional pandemic of fear and anger that it's going to be spreading, especially due to increased uncertainty and concerns over social unrest. And we need to find some vaccination mechanism, if you would, to protect us against that growing, because the future is a terrible place to face from a position of fear. I'm going to move us to a conversation around jobs. This is
Peter, I have a joke for you.
Okay.
To lighten the mood a little bit.
Sure.
So I was a CNN contributor, and a number of years ago, they pitched me a TV show called The Future of with Andrew Yang. It was going to be like the future of healthcare, the future of transportation. And then they ran focus groups and said, hey, bad news, Andrew. People don't like the future. So now everyone listening to your podcast loves the future, embraces the future, trying to make it work for them.
Well, and this is something we're going to be announcing at the Abundance Summit. I don't know when we're going to particularly air this episode, but we are, one of the biggest concerns is people's vision of the future is dystopian. Why? Because Hollywood paints every future scenario as killer robots and, dystopian AI. So if that's the future you've learned, why would you want Ex Machina or Black Mirror or Terminator? And we need to paint better versions of the future. We need visions that are more Star Trek. As Elon said on the pod that Dave and I did with him, we need more Roddenberry and less Cameron in that regard. All right, let's jump in. I
used to have a slide, Peter, saying like it's either Star Trek or Mad Max.
Yeah.
And you kind of veer towards one or the other.
Yeah, we have these two futures in superposition, and we need to collapse the waveform in one of those directions.
Right, to Alex's point, they were speedrunning all
I think they are both
fiction
happening.
points.
And also I want to reach for some sort of Strauss-Howe generation hypothesis type theory that it's cyclical with some time scale of 80 years. Like somehow after World War II, tail fins are getting added to cars in the 50s and 60s, and people were reading the golden age of science fiction, but now people are watching Lord of the Rings and fantasy rather than science fiction. Like fantasy is completely overwhelming science fiction words if you look at trends over time. I guess maybe, Andrew, to put that in question form, how much of generational pessimism do you think is actually generational? How much of it is cyclical versus periodic trends that'll just people will eventually cycle back to optimism after something bad has happened?
Well, I'm a numbers guy, Alex, and one of the numbers that really haunts me is that young people socialize and get together about 50% less than we all did in our 20s. And I see gatherings as optimistic events. Like, even if you decide to have a little party at your house, you have to assume that people will want to come. You have to assume that they'll like your food. You have to assume that, your house can accommodate them. They won't trash the place. And so to me, like, you could go hand in hand with like in real life social gatherings and how good people are going to feel. Right now, unfortunately, we're getting together less and less.
Yeah. All right. I am going to move this conversation towards jobs. So here is a comment from the co-founder of Morning Brew, Austin, who says, my friend who works at a large PE firm said, quote, we just had a firm-wide meeting about how we don't need associates anymore. That's the first slide, first topic. Second one here, the Fed Governor Waller highlights unusual growth without jobs. Historic anomaly where GDP is expanding while labor market is fragile. GDP grew 1.4% in Q4 of 2025, despite the weakest job creation since 2022. And the third story here to weave in comes from Jack Dorsey.
Gotta be Block.
So Block, his company shares soared 24% after 4,000 employees got laid off. So this is what Wall Street rewards, higher profitability from lower costs. So let's paint this picture of the growing loss of jobs. There's a lot of conversation out there from other people in the tech community saying, no, we're going to increase the number of jobs. I think people get confused about entry-level jobs versus, more advanced jobs. Andrew, how do you think about all this?
I talked to a CEO of a publicly traded tech company, and he said, unannounced, we're going to fire 15% of our workers, and then 2 years from now, we're going to fire another 20%. And then 2 years after that, we're going to fire another 20%. He's like, after that, don't know. And I take him at his word. you know what I mean? Especially after this Block illustration where CEOs are going to have to be ruthless on headcount if they want to keep their own jobs and if they want their stock to be healthy. I will also say something kind of bleak and negative, but if you've been inside one of these...
And then you'll tell us a joke.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll tell you a joke. But if you've been inside one of these large corporations, you kind of sense instinctively that 40% of the people aren't really indispensable, shall we say. It's like, because I've worked in startups, and in startups, like everyone is, even in startups, like, not everyone's indispensable all the time. But
there's a much more of a culture of finding problems and solving problems in a company versus laying back.
Oh yeah, and it's one reason why I love startups so much. It's like I find them to be pure utilization of the soul, like energy, talent, optimism, etc. So I think publicly traded companies are going to fire white collar workers very, very quickly, and the easiest people to fire are the people you haven't hired yet. So that they're not going to hire a bunch of whippersnappers. And that's showing up in the numbers where the college premium is quickly evaporating. I do think that these changes are going to apply to small private companies too. I'll use Noble Mobile as an example. We were hiring junior engineers, or trying to, for the last several months. And then our CTO came and said, hey, I don't think we need to hire for that role because the AI tools are now good enough. Like if you have like a strong managerial type, the comparison I make is that used to have pyramids, and someone said I would hire 3 juniors for every senior, and then now you have columns, maybe. So you have like a senior and then 1 junior, and you're good. And so if you're a young person, then you never make it into one of these environments to get trained and learn and develop and ascend. And so that's one of the things that's going to be driving the despair, is that for all these young people that thought the way I did, probably you all did too, get good grades, get into a good school, get a good job, have a good career. That's the
social contract.
Yeah, like, the steps 3 and 4 are going to be harder and harder to find.
And that's going to cause a lot of anger. If I can't get a job, can't get a house, can't get a wife or a husband, and can't have a family, that is what causes social unrest and anger towards those, tech companies or those investors that made that future, destroyed the American dream that we had. So let's bring it back. What's the advice for someone in college today, or someone, a junior, senior in high school? What's the new strategy? We've talked on this pod a lot, because we're all entrepreneurs, as are you, that entrepreneurship is ultimately the future career. It's not working for somebody else, it's working for yourself. that's what I would like for my kids. It's not cut out for everybody. What advice are you giving people?
It's similar, Peter, in that the only career path you can rely on is entrepreneurship and owning your own future and path. But a lot of people aren't cut out for that. And I'm actually going to look at my two boys, one of whom is 13, one of whom is 10. One of them is definitely not cut out for that. And so you're trying to guide people on a path that isn't going to be right for, in my opinion, 80% of people, because entrepreneurship's really, really difficult. So one thing I say to parents is the success factors for our kids are the same as they ever were. It's grit, it's perseverance, it's coachability, it's sociability, it's caring about something, it's hustle, it's believing that your efforts can actually pay off. One of the single biggest factors in whether your kids have those attributes is screen time. Like, you give them too much screen time and their self-control goes down, their ability to focus goes down, like all this stuff. The shorthand for parents is try and keep your kids off of screens and social media to the extent you can, and try and train them to be an awesome ass-kicking human being regardless of circumstances. And then they'll have a chance, knowing that their course of study might not matter. That's like the big thing, is to be like, look, to the extent your course of study matters, it's just like, it's how to think, how to approach things, how to care about, learning and development. But the actual subject matter, it could be anything. And knowing too, that to the extent that some of our kids can be channeled towards the trades, and jobs that we're going to need, because, the simplest examples I use is, and Elon might disagree with me, but I'm pretty confident I'm right. We're not going to have a robot plumber anytime soon. We're not going to have a robot HVAC repair person anytime soon. Like, all of the old buildings will still need electricians, of which there's a massive shortage. So if you have like a young person who might be handy, and let's say they're a guy, it's not a bad thing. I mean, you skip the indebtedness, you skip a lot of things.
Yep. This is awesome. So all the women become entrepreneurs and all the men become plumbers and tradesmen.
What was the gender angle there, Andrew?
That's great.
Well, it's just that it's more likely for a man to pursue some of these trades, like statistically. Yeah. And what we've done is we've stigmatized the trades for everybody. And then we should be saying to men in particular, trades are cool. Really good, solid, steady job. Like, don't worry about it.
Well, if you're a data center builder, you have a hell of a future right now. So there's all sorts of areas that you could apply this.
Yeah, the question of when an Optimus, or pick your favorite robot, is able to do that. Yeah, Elon's vision is, next 3 years, even if it's 8 years, right? I mean, the progress we're seeing in robotic software and robotic agility and progress is stunning. We've seen in a year.
Data centers, yes, I can see robots building them in like some foreseeable time frame. Plumber, no. It's just that because the human is just going to have an easier time knocking on your door, being like, "Hey, what's the problem?" Coming in, doing the thing.
Can we talk time frames, Andrew?
Yeah, please.
When I think about the time frames here, the challenging time frame where UBI stimulus checks capital into to sort of quelch the fear and uncertainty is like the 1 to 3 year time frame. Bringing universal basic services, I think, is starts coming in maybe in 3 years to the 5-8 year time frame, right? I've always viewed that the challenges are the next 3 to 8 years, and then on the backside of that is abundance, where people have access to everything they need. Do you agree with that time frame, that layout?
Hey, Peter, I love your time frame because it's actually very, very optimistic. You're talking to the preeminent proponent of UBI, and if you were like, yeah, UBI next 1 to 3 years, I would take it 100 times out of 100. You know what I mean? Even as I'm the guy who's saying we should do this and it's totally possible. So I hope you're right. I hope we end up heading down this road over the timeline you laid out. Because the truth of it is that, and this is like the Buckminster Fuller quote, that the race between utopia and dystopia will be decided at like the very last moment, kind of thing. That there's like a race on, and the dystopian march is going on along at a pretty nice clip, shall we say? And then the utopian march, it's like fits and starts in my view. But it's one reaon why I would urge people who have the capacity to do more, to do what they can, to do what we can, because like utopia is like a deliberate choice, and it's going to require like a group of innovators like you all and the folks that we collectively know to do what we do and build.
But maybe, Andrew, just to press this point, what is your expectation regarding the timeline for humanoid robots making themselves available for plumbing services to the broad American public?
Oh, so again, I don't foresee robot plumbers for quite some time because the home environment is like, especially like a home you haven't been in, like the rest of it. It's like, you'd rather send a human, and the human's not that expensive in that context. Whereas like a data center, the whole thing is controlled and controllable. And then like you'd have humans still in there, but like you'd also have a ton of robots. And I think people sense that.
Can I persuade you to put a number to the not for some time? Is it like 10 years that you think we get humanoid robot plumbers? 20 years? What's the precise timescale you envision?
I think human plumbers are safe for at least 10 years and probably significantly longer.
Wow. Well, isn't that then the solution to, in your mind, at least to technological disemployment? Let's just ramp up the trades, and the trades will absorb the excess of so-called white-collar surplus. Why isn't that the solution?
Oh, it's part of it, Alex. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of competition for those jobs. But like the numbers don't work out, to your point. It's like you have a certain number of plumbers per like capita, and then you can't have like 10x that number.
but look at the sectors with Balmol's cost disease, like healthcare. Like, why can't everyone have one, or not everyone, but the wealthiest portion of the society, and this is the thought experiment, this isn't a policy prescription, have like one or two personal healthcare assistants as one of several classes, or personal plumbers, personal assistants, and absorb the labor surplus that way?
You're certainly going to see a significant proportion of Americans whose job it is to serve the top layer, the top 20%. You're going to see nannies. You're going to see personal assistants. You're going to see personal trainers. You do now. But I will say, if you look at home health care aides as a profession, the turnover is rampant because it's very difficult isolating work, and the average compensation is $35,000 a year for a home health care aide. So if you say, hey, that's going to be the job of the future, like none of the people listening to this right now want to be a home health care aide. It's and one of my jokes in one of my books was like, I was a home health care aide for one day and I wanted to tap out. And so if you were to ask like millions of people, be like, hey, bathe grandma, and that's what you're going to do as like your job forever. Like, there's very, very few people are cut out for that. And the people that are doing it right now often are doing it because it's the only job on offer.
They have to do it. Yeah.
Hey, Andrew, you had a book come out last month. Tell us about it. And I love the title of it.
I'm sure it's very aptly named, Hey Yang, Where's My $1,000? You can see the image. It's me with some money.
That's awesome.
The alternate title you'll enjoy even more. It's Hey, am I racist, or are you Andrew Yang?
Oh, no. So what's the book about?
The book's about the ins and outs of trying to make utopia happen over this last number of years. And I sensed that this was going to be kind of a fraught time. So I wanted to write something light-hearted and humorous, while also trying to get some ideas across. So it was a really fun process, a lot easier than writing my other nonfiction books. And I'm happy to say people are enjoying it. So if you want like a laugh that'll make you think, I think it's a good choice.
Andrew, you're going to be joining us at the Abundance Summit this coming Sunday. Excited. Can you bring a couple of books with you?
I think I'll have a whole crate, or your team might have
fantastic.
already ordered a crate.
Oh, great. Then I'm so happy we
don't
did.
really, but have, yeah, thank you. By the way, this is funny. Peter, have you written a book?
I have a couple.
Yeah, so then and I sense maybe the rest of you have too. But if you want to prey on someone when they're vulnerable, like get to them when they have a book coming out, because then they're just like, oh, I have all these thoughts, and like I wrote them down, and then if you're like, I want to hear your thoughts, then they'll be like, ooh, someone wants to hear my thoughts. It's like a very vulnerable time.
Alex is bringing 600 copies of Solve Everything, which is a book/paper that we co-authored mostly under Alex's genius. So excited for both of your works of art and intelligence to make it there.
This episode is brought to you by Blitzing.